Her name was Dumai, from an ancient word for a dream that ends too soon. She was born in the last glow of the sunset years, when every day poured soft as honey in the city of Antuma. One spring, a young woman stepped through its gate, brought there by a forbidden wish. She claimed to remember nothing of her past, only that she was called Unora. No one could have guessed, from her dusty clothes and calloused hands, that her father had once held the power to set the whole court fluttering in his wake. No one could have guessed what she was in the capital to do. In those years, it was hard to farm the dry interior of Seiki. Since the god's retiral, long droughts had afflicted the island. Away from its shriveled rivers, the ground thirsted. Had the governor of Afa been like other men, he would have lamented his post in a dust province. Instead, he laboured every day to channel water to its fields. Each time he returned to court, Empress Manai deemed him more inventive and hard-working. She gave him a mansion in the capital, where he placed his daughter, Unora, under the care of a nursemaid. But Empress Manai had long been unwell, and her ailment did not ease. She renounced the throne before her time, and retired to Mount Ipieda, leaving her only child to be enthroned. Though Prince Gerodu was still young, he had learned from his mother. In his first act, he summoned the governor of Afa and made him Riverlord of Seiki, overlooking all others in his favour. For a year, he was the most trusted and beloved of the boy emperor. So it shocked no one when he was suddenly banished, accused of having roused a god to make his province thrive. One family surrounded the emperor, and they allowed no one else close. Not for long. Their servants found Unora and flung her into the dark street. At 9, she was left a destitute orphan. Her nursemaid stole her back to Afa, and for 10 long years the world forgot them. Unora worked the fields once more. She learned to bear the sun. Without her father, water no longer flowed. She planted millet and barley and wheat, folding seed into dry earth. She lived with a burning throat and a dull ache in her bones. Each night, she walked to the shrine on the hill, the shrine for the dragon Pajati, and clapped. One day, Pajati would wake. One day, he would hear their prayers and bring rain to the province. Over time, she forgot her days in the capital. She forgot what it was like to hear a river, or to bathe in a cool pond. But she never forgot her father. And she never forgot who had destroyed them both. The Kuposa, she thought. The Kuposa undid us. In her 20th year, death came to the settlement. The drought lasted for months that year. The field workers pinned their hopes on their well, but something had tainted the water. As her old nursemaid vomited, Unora stayed at her side, telling her stories, stories of Pajati, the god they all willed to return. The villagers took the body away. They were the next to die. By the 6th day, only Unora was left. She lay in the stubble of the crop, too thirsty to fight, and waited for the end. And then, the sky opened. Rain touched the ground that had long been a deathbed, a patter that became a downpour, turning the dry earth dark and sweet. Unora blinked away droplets. She sat up and cut the rein in her hands, and as she drank, she laughed for joy. The storm left as suddenly as it had come. Unora stumbled towards the creaking forest, soaked in mud from head to foot. For days she sipped from leaves and puddles, finding little she could eat. Though her legs shook and an old bear stalked her, she kept on following the stars. At last she came to the right place. Behind the trickling remains of a waterfall, the white dragon Pajati slumbered. Pajati, guardian of Afa, who had once granted wishes to those who paid a price. Unora sought the bell that would wake him, faint with hunger and thirst. Now she would leave her fate to the gods. Deep was their slumber in those years. Most had withdrawn into undersea caverns beyond human reach, but some had gone to sleep on land. Though Saiki grieved their absence, disturbing them was the highest of crimes. Only the imperial family had that right. Unora found she had no fear, for she had nothing left to lose. The bell was taller than she was, the bell that would wake the guardian, not to be touched on pain of death, green staining the bronze. Unora approached it. If she did this, she could be killed. If she failed to do this, there was only sickness and starvation. I deserve to live. The thought came like a thunderclap. She had known her worth since the day she was born. Exile had beaten her into the dust, but she would not stay there. Not one day more. She struck the bell. After centuries of silence, it tolled the night in two. Pajati answered its call. As Unora watched, the god emerged from the cave, all the many coils of him. He was white all over, from his pearly teeth to the gleaming pallor of his scales. She let her knees give way and pressed her forehead to the ground. The star has not yet come. His voice rushed like wind. Why do you rouse me, child of earth? Unora could not sign her words. No one could. When Pajati offered his tail, she grasped it with shivering hands. His scales were like wet ice. It was not for her to ask gifts of the gods. That was the privilege of empresses, of kings. Great One, I am a woman of your province. I come from a village stricken by drought. She clung to her courage. I beg you for rain, king of the waters. Please, send us more. I cannot grant that wish. It is not time. Unora dared not ask him when the time would come. It had already been too long. Then I ask for a way to enter the shining court of Antuma, so I might beg the emperor to save my father from exile, she said. Help me move the son of the rainbow to mercy. Pajati showed his teeth. He was the brilliance of the moon, his scales the milk and tears of night. There is a price. It was no small price to pay, where water and salt were so precious and rare. Unora closed her eyes. She thought of her father, the dead in her village, her solitude. And even though her lips were cracked, her temples light from thirst, a drop seeped down her cheek. Snow Maiden wept for the great Quiriki, and he understood humans had goodness in them, her nursemaid had told her. Only when she wept for him could he know that she had the sea in her too. The warning from her childhood beat within her. It urged her to accept the death that waited in her wake. But the god of her province had already spoken. One turn of the sun it will last, and no more. He gave her a tear in return, dropping it into her palm like a coin. She lifted the silver glow to her lips. It was like biting into the blade of a sickle. That drop swept a decade of thirst from her throat, utterly quenching her. Pajati took her tear with the tip of his tongue, and before he could tell her the whole of the bargain, Unora fell to the ground in a faint. The next day, A messenger found her still there. A messenger from the Shining Court.